At the Abraham Lincoln Bookshop, if it's on our shelves, it's history.
Essentially, that's what happened. Omaha Beach became a disaster almost at once. It was more heavily defended than we anticipated. There was the one intelligence failure the Allies had was the 352nd Division of the German Army. And by the way, I was talking earlier about how many divisions there were in the American Army. This is the 352nd Division. But anyway, it was sent to Omaha Beach, not because they expected anything there. It was R&R. Go to the beach and have some time off. So there's an extra division there. And the terrain works again. It's a crescent-shaped beach so that you've got flanking fire as well as direct fire coming in. And it was just crowded with obstacles. The UDT, what we would call UDT today, the Naval Disposal Units, came ashore. They could not blow up enough of them to clear the beaches. So it was a mess. Yeah. And that's when the destroyers came in from their seaward position to provide close-in fire support.
I can imagine what it would be like to be in those first Higgins boats, the first wave, and that door comes down, and you know what's going to come at you.
Well,
it seems to me, I don't know, did Saving Private Ryan
I was just going to say that you can imagine
it,
because Spielberg did an absolutely terrific job. Yeah. That first 20
Scared
minutes
the hell out of me.
Is absolutely the most accurate. There's a wonderful one in Master and Commander of Naval Warfare in the Age of Sail. I'll also recommend that film for those who haven't seen it. But the first 20 minutes of Saving Private Ryan are absolutely accurate and gripping, and so you can feel what it was like. But if that's not enough, as I was mentioning, the memoirs of those sailors and soldiers whose oral histories are at the Eisenhower Center, they can tell you.
Yeah.
And you can feel it when you read those, what it was like.
So the lucky ones were those who were coming off the LCTs and they dropped into the Higgins boats and broke their legs. Those were the lucky ones?
Yeah, you could say that. There are several ways of getting
casualties.
these guys to the beach. I've talked about the LSTs. They go right up on the beach. Most of these guys get into the little Higgins boats. These are like the Jeeps of the Naval War. They're 36 feet long. They're little. You can put 36 guys in them, shoulder to shoulder. No benches, no place to sit. You're just standing there jostling. The thwarts are over your head. You can see nothing, right? You've been at sea for 36 hours, and now you're all climbing down off either the transports or the other larger ships 10 miles off the coast into these little bouncing Jeeps. I'm making myself seasick. And then you circle for several hours, bouncing and bouncing and bouncing, right? People throwing up on each other. It smells like you can't believe. And then they say, okay, now head for the beach. And it's another 2 hours to get to the beach. And you get there and that ramp drops. There's one of the great scenes, and I have it in the book, and this came again from those personal memoirs. A soldier in one of the Higgins boats about a mile from the beach heaved himself over the edge and throwing up, dry heaving into the ocean. And the sergeant yelled at him, "Get down, you'll be killed." And he said, I'm dead anyway. And that's exactly how you feel if you've ever been in those circumstances.
But then you have the second and third waves come through. What was that like, wading through dead bodies, having to get them to the side? Couldn't do anything about it, no time.
Sure.
You keep going.
Yeah. Well, if you can get ashore at all. Remember in Omaha Beach in particular, there are all these so far unexploded and mined obstacles in your path. And wherever they would have been cleared, vessels had gone ashore and been blown up or hit by artillery fire, the German 88s or the oyster mines on the bottom, bodies all over the beach. So you're heading for the beach thinking you're just going to put up on the sand and disload your cargo. There's no place to go. So they ended up going kind of back and forth looking for a parking space in Chicago. There's no place to go. And that's one reason why, in addition to the currents, soldiers were put ashore distant from where they thought they would be.
Then tell me about, briefly, about Piccadilly Circus. That's the rendezvous point that all of this started. Give us a quick glimpse of that.
Well, can you imagine it? In your mind's eye, you've got troops coming out of the Thames estuary. They're coming out of Portsmouth and Spithead. They're coming out of Plymouth. They're coming out from Scotland around Cornwall and Land's End. And they're all going to gather in this one meeting spot. Well, the official name was Zebra, I think they called it. but everybody called it Piccadilly Circus. Piccadilly Circus, for those who don't know, a circus is what we call a roundabout. It's a driving disaster in which roads coming from every direction, everybody circles until they go in another direction. And Piccadilly Circus in London is the most infamous and most crowded. So everybody saw this as, oh, this is worse than Piccadilly Circus, because 6,000 ships, as far as the eye could see, of all the mental images that the soldiers and sailors retained from that day, including the landing on the beach, the one everybody remembered is, my God, I looked out and I could see ships as far as I could see, in every direction. And of course, 6,000 is a big number, but it must have seemed like 100,000 to look at it. Visually, it was just... And then they had to circle there for a few hours, and they got mixed up. People got in the wrong units and so on, but they sorted themselves out and then went down these cleared, swept channels and into the beach.
So can we say that today Congress is like Piccadilly Circus, go around in circles and they get off at various places where they want to?
No comment.
A question I wanted to ask about scrap metal. We had all these ships and tanks and everything else that was, clogging everything, and they came in, the Seabees or whomever came in and took tank parts that they need and this and that, but they had to get the rest of the metal off. Who made money off that scrap metal? Who finally got that contract?
You mean the scrap metal when they did scrap drives at home, on the home front?
They have to take it back.
I honestly don't know the answer to that question.
I didn't think you did, but I had to ask the question.
I think a lot of that, to be honest, the drives were partly public relations, as much as they were, we really need the material. For example, when they said we're going to ration gasoline, it wasn't because we didn't have gasoline. We had lots of gas. We were exporting gasoline. It was because we didn't have rubber. And if you couldn't sell gasoline, people would drive less, and they wouldn't need to buy rubber, and that would conserve the rubber. And the scrap drives were in a way like that. It was, yes, some of that was very useful in building airplanes and tanks and jeeps and other things, but also it was, we all need to demonstrate that we're in this together. This is our war. We're all in it. The kids with their wagons collecting scrap. You're in it too. And that's something, of course, we don't have now.
So did Churchill feel like Moses, that he couldn't enter the promised land? He couldn't come and watch what he had put together? They said, no, stay home.
Well, that's a complicated story because, first of all, his reluctance to do this remained right up until the very end. There was a meeting May 27th. You think that's less than a week before the invasion. And he's there saying, and he made a great comment to Eisenhower. He says, I'm beginning to think this may work. What? We're doing this, Mr. Prime Minister. But if he is going to go, if it is going to happen, he's going to be there. Churchill is Churchill, right? He's a former naval person, as he always wrote to Roosevelt. He wanted to go on the Belfast, one of the cruisers, that was going to bombard the beaches, Juno Beach, I think, and notified Eisenhower, I'm going. And Eisenhower said, I'd prefer that you did not. And Churchill said, well, I outrank you, I'm going. Churchill went to the king. He said, King, I don't think he said that, but Churchill's planning to go, and I don't think this is a good idea. Well, first the king thought, this is great, I'll go too.
Yeah.
Right? And then he thought, this is George VI, this is the guy with the speech problem, the movie, the King's Speech. So it's Colin Firth. Colin Firth says, no, this is not a good idea, and he tells Churchill, you can't go. And Churchill says, well, no, wait a minute. He says, the king reminds him, the prime minister of the country cannot leave the country without the permission of the monarch. And Churchill says, yes, but I am also First Lord of the Admiralty, as well as Prime Minister, and I'm going into one of my own ships, and being in a king's ship is the same as being in the king's country, so I can go. And George VI writes this beautiful letter. He says, you know, I would love to go. I want to be there. It's my Navy. I wear a naval uniform in public, and I would love to be there too, but I can't, because I know my duty is here. How is it fair that you should get to go when I can't? Churchill, okay, fine. And he didn't go. But you're right, he wanted to go.
Why was Robert Capa the only filmmaker that we see there?
Isn't that amazing?
And a huge thing like this, there was no one to document.
I want to be a smart aleck. I don't know if it's true to say he's the only one who lived and whose film wasn't ruined. Mm-hmm. And I think that's probably true. Mm-hmm. I don't know that for a fact. But you're right, we have a handful of those gripping still images from him and almost nothing else. But you think about those landings, particularly in Omaha Beach. We lost all our radios. We lost all our light artillery. We lost much of our ammunition. We lost a lot of our detonation material for getting rid of the obstacles because it was such a mess. We probably lost a lot of cameras too, and film, and photographers, but those survived, and I'm glad we have them.
Yes. I don't know really how to end. I have so many questions I had not really gotten to. You're going to have to read the book for this. Radar, for instance, and its use. Actually, I was going to ask a quick question. What do you think about this? This is, again, a question for today. Since it's on 9/11, do you think we need a unified command, such as CCS, to fight radical Islam? Do we need that worldwide?
Worldwide? You mean America or America and its allies?
Yeah.
We almost have that as it is. This is the last war fought, of course, with divided command. The National Security Act of 1947 created the Department of Defense, which, of course, did not exist in World War II. The Army and the Navy had separate cabinet members who sat on the cabinet, did not cooperate unless they were forced to do so. So, in a way, that the emergence of that combined system happens here. It happens because of D-Day. And it's made a law in 1947 of the National Security Act, and it has been continuing in that direction ever since. And I think it will continue to do that.
And so you think we may be going toward that
I do.
ourselves here?
I do.
Craig, thank you so much for being here. This is a wonderful book, a fascinating book. I think everyone's going to enjoy it. I appreciate all of you watching today at Virtual Book Signing. Go to our website, listen to your emails, and see what's coming up in the future. Your publisher, we appreciate Oxford having gotten you here, and of course, as always, the staff at Abraham Lincoln Bookshop. We could not do this without them. So thank you, and all of you. Come back again and say hello.